The trailer was secured inside the garage. The Bronco in the driveway with Joe standing watch. My wife, myself, and the kids work relentlessly filling every storage bin, backpack, cooler, and box with all the supplies from the basement. All the food, water, medical, propane, and ammo. Once the basement was emptied, we gathered sleeping bags, blankets, clothes, Mr. Buddy heaters, the Coleman cooktop stove, solar panel chargers, ham radios, a set of walkies, and the 3 5-gallon containers of gas. The whole process had taken over 6 hours. We had about 2 hours to daylight. The trailer was full to capacity. The last few items I added were some tools, shovels, rakes, and an axe. It was extremely difficult to leave our first home. We'd been here almost 10 years. It was the first house I'd ever owned. I covered everything in the trailer with a camo painted tarp. I pulled out the road maps and began highlighting multiple routes. I'd usually take the expressway when we ventured out to the campsite, but I knew that would be a parking lot of abandoned vehicles. With Russian forces due south, I decided we'd venture west before trying to maneuver back south. I walked out to try and convince Joe one last time to join us. He was still pulling night watch out in front of our house, allowing us all the time we needed to load up our gear. There was a peacefulness in the air tonight, a full moon, and a sky full of stars. I said, "What do you say, Joe? Any chance you've changed your mind? Come with us? Leave the chaos behind?" He said, "You know I can't. I'm hoping my wife finds her way back." I never told you this, but she was 5 months pregnant that day she stepped onto the plane. She'd be 6 months by now. It was supposed to be our first child. I said, "Well, you know where we're going to be. We'll be there hopefully by nightfall. I've got multiple routes ready to go in case we run into trouble." Joe helped me hook up the trailer to the hitch. My wife and kids said goodbye to Joe, thanked him for everything. I told him he's welcome to anything left behind here. The 5,000 gallons of pool water, bicycles, tools, whatever he needed, it was his now. Bear hopped up into the back seat with the kids, and Joe and I said our goodbyes. I told him, "Keep up the good fight, keep believing, and carry on, brother. I hope we cross paths again one day." Joe was an Army vet, the kind that didn't offer up too much emotion. But I could tell this moment was getting to him. I walked across the street to Eddie's final resting place, said my goodbyes to my neighbor and friend as well. Hopped into the vehicle, cranked the key over, and the 5 of us, plus Bear, set out for Wood Creek campsite. My wife and the kids were extremely uneasy about the trek we were embarking on. Truth was, I was too. I was now used to having Joe's cover, protection, and friendship. Even though my wife saved my life back on day 10, she wasn't battle-tested. I'd only had a few short hours of sleep in the past 2 days. Now more than ever, I needed to be alert and be ready. I told her, I've got 2 stops I needed to make on the way. She was surprised to hear me say that. She said, "I thought we were going straight there. Where do you plan on stopping?" I told her Dale and the kids from the group home had never left my mind. I was only a mile away, and we were headed that way anyway. I needed to know if they were still there, still alive. I also intended on driving to my father's house. I hadn't heard from him since 3 days before the EMP hit. That was now 31 days ago. As I drove down the street, we came upon the downed trees and the telephone pole where I had my first run-in with the Marauders back on day 4. The remains were still there, what was left of them anyway. This was the first images my wife and kids had seen since the world went to hell. Abandoned vehicles, houses burned to the foundation, dead bodies in the road. The sun was now rising to our east as we entered the neighborhood where the group home sat. The fire station where I'd led Dale to water was approaching on our right. As we got closer, I said, "No. Damn it, no. Don't let it be." There were 5 bodies laying out front. I told my wife, "Be ready for anything." I left the vehicle running and jumped out, rifle in hand. It was Dale and 4 of the boys. All 5 bodies were riddled with multiple bullet holes. The bodies were decomposed and had been there for weeks, it looked like. I was heartbroken at this sight. I had no time to spare. I wish I could have given them a proper burial. My wife and kids were in tears at the horror that sat next to us. I hopped back in, hands shaking on the steering wheel. We headed off to the next destination, my father's house. A normal route, and it was 12 miles from where we were standing. In 3 short days, it would be his 70th birthday. I only hoped he was still alive so we could celebrate it. We wouldn't be taking the normal route, though. I needed to stay off as many main roads as possible. My biggest concern was the location of his house. He lived 1 mile from the city's airport. An airport that I fully expected the Russians to now be occupying. I knew this wasn't a smart decision, but I needed to find out his fate. He would have done the same for me without hesitation. I headed south towards the next town over where he lived. The closer we got, the more horror we seen. Downed commuter flights all over the place. Plane after plane crashed into the ground. I couldn't imagine the hundreds, maybe thousands of planes across the country that fell from the sky at the same time that day. Tens of thousands of lives lost in an instant. We were lucky to be averaging 15 miles an hour as we maneuvered around vehicle after vehicle. What would normally be a 15-minute drive to his house would now take us well over an hour. I stuck to roads without bridges and without many bends, always fearful what would lie ahead. I'd normally take this road when I drive into our weekly meeting at work. Work, I thought. I couldn't believe it, but I missed it. Back when paying bills and working 50-plus hours a week was the norm. No matter what route I chose, we were eventually going to have to cross over a bridge that ran over the Erie Canal. And now was that moment. My wife with binoculars in hand said she didn't see anything ahead. I didn't know if I was more fearful of gunshots ringing out or someone deploying spike trips and flattening our wheels. We only had 1 spare tire in the back, 2 flats, and we'd be up Schitt's Creek. I thought about the fix-a-flat I left behind in my garage as we rushed out that morning. Damn it. It'd be a good thing to have right now. I slowly approached the bridge, and to my shock, coming down the side street to our right was 3 men running towards us, waving their hands, yelling for us to stop. My wife said, "What are you going to do?" I didn't hesitate. I floored it and accelerated over the bridge, not giving the men a second chance. I didn't know who they were. Civilians, marauders. For all I knew, they could have been co-workers of mine, holed up in our office for the past month. I didn't care. I wasn't taking the chance of finding out. We were now 5 miles out from my father's house. The 3 girls and Bear were now asleep in the back seat. We'd made it to the next town over. As I approached the now non-functioning signal light, we faced another hurdle. The intersection was blocked with broken down vehicles. They looked more like bumper cars. 8 cars I counted in the way, blocking both lanes. We were going to have to turn around, cross the bridge again, head down the side street, the same direction the men were running from. My wife asked, "Isn't there another way?" I said, "Not if we intend on making campsite by darkness." I carefully backed up, which was not an easy task to do with a trailer attached. I told my wife, "Have your rifle ready. I'm not stopping for anything," as we backtracked to the bridge. We'd cross and immediately make a left onto the road where my office was located. As we approached the bridge, the same group was still there. They heard the Bronco coming. I crossed over the canal, turned left, and the 3 of them stood right in the middle of the road. I told my wife, "Be ready to shoot." They didn't look to be armed with firearms. One had a tire iron, the other a hammer, the third had a pipe. They were 50 feet away, yelling for us to stop, and that word was not in my vocabulary today. I said, "If they don't move, you shoot them." She said, "Are you serious?" I just nodded my head. 20 feet away, and they had no intention of moving. I yelled, "Shoot!" waking the girls up in the back seat. The man in the middle threw the hammer directly into our windshield as I ran him over and kept moving. The windshield was now compromised with cracks. She never got a shot off. I said, "Don't ever make that mistake again. Next time, it could cost us our life." I passed my work office on our right, not even giving it a glance. I fully expected there would be dead bodies of friends and co-workers inside. The next intersection ahead also had vehicles piled up, but we were able to get just enough room to squeeze through. We'd already blown through a quarter tank of gas. I assume this old Bronco, loaded up with 5 people and a dog, towing a trailer filled to capacity, was getting about 7 miles to the gallon. As we made our way, now into another residential area, it was more of the same. Looted out houses, burned out houses, and the aroma of death in the air. Bobbing and weaving around vehicles, it then hit me. Check the radio, see if anything is broadcasting. Is there any news out there? I navigated the wheel as my wife turned the dial, checking both AM and FM bands. Nothing but static. No signs of life or hope. We were now less than a mile from my father's street. He lived in a condo association where the average age was close to 60. I was nervous with anticipation as to what I'd find. I slowly pulled in, and the first thing I noticed was the overgrown grass and bushes. The maintenance crew had always kept the landscaping immaculate. I passed the playground and the basketball court, where I'd spend my childhood from sunup to sundown with friends. I parked out back, grabbed a walkie, giving my wife the other. "I'll radio you as soon as I get in. Be alert and be ready." I opened the gate to the common walkway. His condo was the third one down. With my rifle in my right hand, I reached for my keys with the left hand. Out of habit, I guess. They weren't there. I'd left them behind at home, hanging in the kitchen. I hadn't had much use for them in the past 28 days. I slowly approached his back door. It was locked. I rang the doorbell and knocked, waited, hoping and praying for an answer. Nothing, not a peep. I went to check the garage door to see if his car was in there. It was locked too. I decided to kick it in. The garage was empty. His car wasn't there. If he wasn't home, there was only one other place he could be. The golf course where he was a member at. He played every day. Usually post over 130 rounds a year. It wasn't uncommon for him to play 36 holes and then go enjoy some drinks at the outdoor bar. I decided to leave a note on the back door, telling him we were okay, his granddaughters were fine, and we were headed to Wood Creek campsite in the southern tier. Before I could turn around, I heard gunshots ring out, all too close. My first thought was the wife and kids in the Bronco. I picked up the walkie, called out, and received no response. I ran back out to the vehicle. They were all unharmed. More shots rang out, though. I could hear them, but I couldn't tell where they were coming from. I hopped back in the driver's seat and we took off. I said, "Grandpa's not here. He's probably stranded at the golf course when the world changed." It was in the same direction we were headed. Southeast. I had no idea who was shooting and what they were shooting at, and we weren't here to find out. At that moment, a group of fighter jets flew overhead in the direction of the airport. I could hear bombs dropping and missiles being deployed. I only hoped it was our boys exterminating Russian forces occupying that airport. The golf course where he was a member at was 15 miles away, and I now had a sense of urgency come over me, knowing that's where my father was. It was mostly back roads leading into rural areas with one bridge to cross that went over the New York State Thruway. I prayed it was still intact. We were about to find out. I pulled the Bronco off the side of the road a half mile short of the overpass. Binoculars in hand, I saw no roadblock, no damage, no signs of trouble. We began our approach, and I was shocked at what I saw on the Thruway. Among the dozens and dozens of stranded vehicles was a huge C-5 Galaxy military transport plane that had crashed to the ground. I'd only ever seen pictures of these enormous planes that carried tanks, Humvees, and supplies. It was broken into pieces along the shoulder of the Thruway. I took a moment and took the scene in. We continued over the bridge 5 miles out from our destination. My father was ex-Air Force. He was a mechanic on the aircrafts back in the 60s. I held out hope he was still alive and well. The golf course sat adjacent to acres and acres of cornfields. There was a restaurant and a bar there as well, enough food and beverages where he could have survived these 28 days. Knowing him, he was playing golf from sunrise to sunset each day, complaining of the course conditions that weren't being kept up with. We rolled up the road, and the course was to our left. I was scanning the parking lot for his white Hyundai Sonata. "There it is," I yelled. "He's here." I could not contain my excitement for a moment, forgetting how dangerous this world still is. My wife tried to calm me down, but after a month of wondering about his fate, I was seconds from reuniting with him. There was no keeping calm. We drove in the parking lot and I could see 6 to 7 guys sitting out around the outdoor bar. They were shocked to see a vehicle rolling in. I knew a bunch of the members from the 3 to 4 times a year my dad would bring me as a guest to play golf. I told the family to wait here while I see what's going on. Taking no chances, I approached heavily armed with my rifle and sidearm. I recognized Donnie, one of my father's friends and playing partners. I said, "Donnie, where's my dad? I see his car out there in the parking lot." He didn't answer me. I asked again, this time with a more stern voice. "Don, where is he?" Again, no answer, but this time he shook his head. By now we were face to face. I grabbed him by his shirt, asked again, "Where is he?" Don pointed over to the 9th green. I could see a freshly dug grave. The 9th hole was my father's favorite. He once won a skin there for over $1,900. I dropped to my knees and tears ran down my cheeks. I was devastated. It was 3 days away from his birthday. I asked Donnie how. What happened? By now, the rest of the guys sitting there began to extend their condolences. How, Donnie? Tell me, damn it. Donnie said that originally there was about 25 guys there left after the grid went down. Each day a few would wander off looking for help, looking for water. He said 2 weeks after everything went to shit, they ran out of water and resorted to collecting rainwater and drinking from the 3 ponds on the course. What they didn't run out of, though, was alcohol. Most days, after golfing, a group of 10 to 12 guys sat around drinking and playing cards. 5 days ago, there was a disagreement between Bill and Charlie. Words were exchanged and it became physical. Your dad tried to separate them, but Charlie shoved him. Your dad fell over and hit his head on the concrete. He immediately began convulsing. There was blood coming out of his eyes and ears. We knew his skull was fractured, but we couldn't do anything. We had no help, no ambulance, no 911, nothing. He died later that night, and I decided to bury him on his favorite hole. I said, "Where's Charlie now, Don? Where is he?" Don said it was an accident. He didn't mean for it to happen. Things got heated from the alcohol. I don't care. Where is he, Don? The rest of the men tried to calm me. I raised my rifle in their direction and said, "I'm only going to ask one more time. Where the fuck is he?" One of the other guys squealed, said he's out on the 6th hole collecting water. I radioed my wife, said, "Hold tight, don't let your guard down." She asked, "What's wrong? Is he okay?" I couldn't muster the words or the courage to tell her. "Stay put, and I'll be back as soon as possible." You see, he wasn't just my dad. He was a best friend, a role model, the person I looked to for guidance and wisdom. I just kept replaying what I imagined his last few hours on Earth were spent like. Unable to talk, unable to see, most likely in a vegetative state. I was hell-bent on revenge. The group pleaded with me not to go after Charlie. It went in one ear and right out the other. I set off on a mile or so walk to the 6th hole to find and kill Charlie.